Oh yeah, I forgot to say. Hi everyone, it's Laura. I have a great video to share with you today. This is another vintage illustration. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My channel is all about vintage photos, vintage and retro items that we can paint and that we can sketch and that we can fully enjoy items and photos from a bygone era and bring back all that nostalgia that we loved from the 1900s up through the 2000s and everything vintage and retro in between. So today, working in my sketchbook, and if you hear little nails on the floor, that's my American Bulldog walking around. She loves being in here with me. So we have a photo here that I found, a reference photo. It's a black and white photo of an ice skater from the 1920s. And so I'm using the photo reference on my phone as I sketch in my sketchbook. Now I'm using a BIC mechanical pencil with the Xtra-Strong graphite that's in it. I love using this because the graphite stays on top of the sketchbook paper and doesn't penetrate too far into the fibers, even with pressing a little bit harder because I'm heavy-handed. So I love using this. It also erases really well. I absolutely love this pencil. And they're super cheap. You can get them at any grocery store, any local store. So they're readily available. And you can also buy them on Amazon. So he's got like a wool coat on. He's got like wool pants on. And so using graphite to sketch this, it's also going to help build up that texture, because when we're illustrating or we're painting, drawing, anything that's old or portraying something that's old, any of that dirty, I would say dirty in quotes, dirtiness that we can add to the illustration helps tell the story that the photo is old. And I love doing this with my illustrations as well because it replicates that wonderful genre that I'm trying to capture. And so when it's in black and white like this and you get to play around with textures and using different mediums to further replicate that bygone era of maybe a roughed up photograph, or the photograph is faded in some spots, you can do that with any of these mediums and build up that storytelling of the photograph. So this one in particular that I'm sketching out, that I'm eventually going to paint, this photograph is, it's outside, right? And I'm going to scuff this graphite and to make it look like it is dirtied up. And I'm going to make this look like it's an old photograph or an old illustration that was just captured in that moment of time. So again, I've got all these supplies listed below. Feel free to click on any of the items that I use and it'll take you to where you can find them. So I'm starting with yellow ochre Winsor Newton gouache. And like I said at the beginning of the video, we want that smudge. That graphite is going to be picked up by this mop brush, and you're going to let the paint and the water move the graphite around. So this mop brush is great for that. It holds a lot of water. Burnt sienna, we're adding that in over the top of it, blending them together, smudging that graphite. I'm also adding in some Bengal rose. because I'm trying to create the middle tones. I added yellow ochres and burnt sienna for my highlights. I've got the middle tones are my reds and my shadows are in blues. And this helps create that undertone of light to make it look a little bit more realistic. Now I'm taking these colors and I'm muddying them up. For this particular piece, when I'm adding gouache over the top, I want it muddy. I know that sounds strange, but this is a gray day and I want to portray that look. Now, I will still have some of these blues and magentas and these oranges that were mixed in with the colors blending together. They still will show through. But right now, because it's the first underlayer, right now it will be strong and bright. Adding in colors over the top of it with the gouache will make them a little bit more subdued. So by mudding them up a little bit, they won't be as pronounced. They'll be a little bit muted. I hope that makes sense. All right, so I'm gonna let this completely dry. I mean completely dry. I'm using the back of my hand to test the paper for any dampness and any cold. If it feels cold, then I know that the paper is still holding in water. All right, so once this is completely dry, I'm picking up this S Gel pen from Sharpie. This pen is great. It has a great grip on it, and the ink flows out of the ballpoint very, very well. And what I'm going to do with this, as I've done in a couple of my previous videos, is I'm going to be outlining over all my graphite. So just to recap so far, I sketched with graphite pencil. I took gouache, went over all of the graphite with gouache, a thin layer of washes. I let it completely dry, and now I'm going over the pencil drawings with this S Gel pen. Now it dries super quick. It's good. I love this pen. And these pens as well, I have the link below for them for you. You can also find these at any store just like you can with the BIC pencils. Super cheap art supply to get some really cool effects. So I'm just like scumbling in little circles to make the fur lining his coat. I'm just going in the background and adding in some of the trees. There's a little building in the back, might be a barn, the ice. I'm just scratching in some areas because what this does in the next step, it creates the foundation for that old vintage feel along with that graphite. All right, next step, we're back to adding gouache. This layer is going to be just a little bit thicker than we did with the first layers. So you can see as I'm adding this cobalt blue that that gel pen completely bursts out. Now I'm taking this blue with this mop brush that holds a lot of water and paint, and I'm just scuffing back and forth, adding in some of this blue, and I'm just rolling over his face just a little bit because I think I put too much on, and you could say I lightened it up a little bit, but adding in some other colors and really mudding this up, adding in some Winsor Violet just to give it another element of color in the background that pushes that back a little bit. That barn in the background just kind of puts it in the distance so it's not so bold. All right, I'm picking up zinc white out of my gouache palette, and it's mixing in with the colors that I just laid down. Because the colors are still wet that I just laid, That will help mix beautifully in over the top. Really trying to give that frosted feel, that frozen essence to the painting. So I'm going to be adding in several layers of the white. I'm going to let you go ahead and watch, and I will jump back in a little bit. All right, we've got all of our whites down. So right now it looks soft, it looks cold and icy, and we're gonna start building up some layers on his jacket. Now what I used for this was some mixed colors that were already on my palette. So I've got some blues and some browns and some grays. Basically I mixed a dirty dark color. I'm keeping a lot of the ratio from water to paint is pretty thin. I have a little more water than paint on my brush, so I don't have as much pigment, so that way you still can preserve the underneath tones that we laid in first. Trying to create wool or wool-like texture. We're going to do that with the color pencils as we move forward. It'll look a little more like wool. But with this layer, having that dark, muddy color laid in as a base tone will help create that base that we need for the coat and his trousers. I'm adding in some yellow ochre and some burnt sienna for the base of the boots. So basically I'm doing the same thing I did with the coat, just a real thin layer, just a wash, just so I can get a base tone on the boots. So then when I go to add the color pencil over the top, that will give the details. I also added a base coat in over his socks. Same thing, just to give it a base coat. Adding in some colors in the background on that little barn or that shed, and the trees as well. Now, that's just background information. It really isn't the main part, the main subject of the story, but it helps tell the story of whereabouts he is. He's out on a pond or a bay or an inlet somewhere. It would just zing us back in time to when this photo was taken. With that background information, just giving little hints to what it is without fully rendering that in with a lot of detail like I will on him on the skater. Because that skater is in focus, we want everything else in the background to be softer and not as detailed. So that way our eye doesn't focus on the background, it focuses on the skater. All right, now it's time for color pencils. This is the last step that we're gonna do with this piece in our sketchbook. I'm using Premier Prismacolors. These are my favorite color pencils. They're wax-based color pencils, and they blend so well with each other, and they're nice and creamy. So I prefer to use these when I'm just laying in color pencil. So you'll see that I'm going to add the color on the screen with each color pencil that I use, so that way you know what I'm using. Also, again, the links will be below to the sets that I use. All right, so I'm taking this black pencil and I'm just using the tippy toe of the pencil, and I'm doing making little tiny circles. This is called scumbling. And these little tiny circles, you have to be very patient when you're doing this technique, but it's really worth it because it will bring out the fibers, it'll bring out the texture into the fur. I'm also laying the pencil almost horizontal with the paper, just at a slight angle so I get the wide part of the pencil. And I'm laying that on the paper and just scuffing along, and I'm just dusting the top, like almost scuffing the top of the tooth of the paper and creating that wool-like texture that we talked about earlier. When you use gouache, it has a chalky base to it with the binder, and it further creates a nice tooth for a color pencil to grab onto. So I'm picking up some other colors to add into the hat. So again, I'm doing a little more scuffing around with the tippy toe of the pencil. My pencil, as you can see, is super sharp. I'm adding in little dots, little circles, little scumbles, little doodly areas to help pick up some light on the top of that fur. Almost like it's felted wool, maybe. And also with the fringe on his coat. You can see some of that detail popping out. Again, the pencil's super sharp. This pencil is so little. I have other ones that are bigger than that are newer. But I grabbed this one and it's fine. I don't mind. So I picked up a white and I'm adding in little tiny details in over the top to further give it that texture and highlights. And I'm just bringing in some other colors now, some darker colors to render in his hair. Because it's a black and white photo, I really don't know what color his hair is. So you can either go rogue and create your own fun color, or you can use the values in the photograph to depict if the hair is dark or light. And I chose to make his hair dark in the end, just to stay with my photographic reference that I'm using. So I'm just building up layers slowly, again on the tippy toe, to build up those layers in his hair. And here I'm adding in some highlights. So I really want to reiterate the importance when working on facial tones and any of these skin tones to really keep your pencil super sharp. The sharper it is, the littler your marks will be, and the more your pencil will sit in the little pits of the paper. If your pencil is flat or dull, you're going to get a broad stroke at the top of your paper, and it will be very, very hard to layer for you. So super thin layers at the tippy toe of your pencil, making little tiny circles and little, it's called scumbling, but making those little circles will help you be able to build up those layers and in turn create a rich depth in the facial tones. You can see this pencil right here close up in his hand, super, super sharp, little tiny thin layers, super thin and super light, so you can build up those layers. I think the boots are my very favorite part of this illustration. If I go into the photo and study the photo, I can tell that these ice skates have been worn for years. They're well loved, they're broken. He's been using them for season after season, and illustrating and rendering these ice skates to make them look like they do and the photograph just brings me so much joy to render these skates to make them look like they did when he wore them. Now the layers that I add on top of each other with the colored pencil, because I'm not pushing very hard, I'm getting those light casts of color on top. And adding those layers on top of each other, even though they're so light and so with very little contrast, you'll be able to see on the finished piece the rendering of making those boots look very old and quite realistic. It's so easy to be caught up in wanting to see the finished piece like now, like yesterday, but that also robs the practice process that I find is very helpful. When I spend time on a piece, even though this is just in my sketchbook, it helps me learn. Even though I've been doing this for a long time, I still need to practice and I still need to stay sharp. And even though this whole finished piece took about, oh boy, I think I spent about 4.5 hours on this, 5 hours maybe, with drying time, probably six and a half. But it was worth it because I learned so much from this piece. Studying the photograph especially and rendering from this photograph, I will still come across challenges from photograph to photograph, from image to image. Having practice will also help you conquer those challenges. And I find that that is one of the most amazing, self-satisfying parts of being an artist, is to be able to take those puzzle pieces and put them together and have it make sense. Whether it makes sense to us or others, or it just makes sense in our soul. That's all that matters, right? So I'm just adding some highlights on to the ice skates. When leather has been burnished so many times, being scuffed, it has a highlight, almost like a waxing to it. So that's what I was working on. And also adding in some shadowing areas. So I'm adding some of this cloud blue, and you can see my pencil isn't too sharp with this one because I want that texture. I know I keep saying that, it's like the word of the day. I want to create the ribbing in that sock. And when you have a dull pencil, it has that scuffing look to it, and that's what I was trying to go for by using that dull pencil. So we're nearing the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed watching my process. I hope you got a lot out of it. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like. I'm such a new channel. I'm still trying to learn and find my way through this. So with your help, I will get there. Just adding in some other pinks and some red tones into his face because it is quite cold outside, I'm assuming. Let me know if you have ever tried illustrating or painting or sketching from a black and white photo. Let me know how it went. I'd be interested to hear what mediums you used and if you sketched in your sketchbook or if you work on another paper like illustration board or watercolor paper. I'd love to hear about it. And I'm a firm believer in sharing our knowledge with each other and learning from each other. That's how we grow as artists. And I think sharing experiences as well. Last finishing touches are now done. Thank you so much for hanging out with me to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I would love for you to try something like this and have fun with it. See you next time. Bye-bye. Oh, great. All right, I'm picking up this Jespel. Forgot to say. Welcome to La La Laura Vintage. Welcome.